Today, America is the world's largest oil-producing country, so why does it still rely so heavily on Saudi Arabia? After Donald Trump's recent electoral victory, when he attended a UFC event, he was accompanied by Dana White, Elon Musk, and other prominent figures. Among them, a Saudi personality was also notably present. Who is this person, and why is it so important that Donald Trump keeps him by his side everywhere? Despite the defeat in the 2020 election, why did Saudi Arabia invest $2 billion in Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner? Silicon Valley is considered America's largest startup hub. Everyone knows that, but very few people know that its biggest investor is Saudi Arabia. Even in X, formerly Twitter, after Elon Musk, the second largest shareholder is Saudi Arabia. So the question arises, why are all the world's major flashpoints, like the Persian Gulf, Iran, Iraq, the Red Sea, and Yemen, somehow connected to Saudi Arabia? Mohammed bin Salman tried to end the dominance of the American dollar by collaborating with Russia and China. But now that Trump is returning to power, what scenario is shaping up? This is becoming a powerful alliance that could potentially change the world in a way that no one has ever imagined. Before starting the video, I once again request all of you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. The relationship based on which America provides military protection to Saudi Arabia, and in return, Saudi Arabia supplies oil to America, began in the 20th century. These two countries started cooperating with each other for mutual benefit. At that time, Saudi Arabia was a poor and isolated country. It had very limited natural resources, and its economy relied solely on Muslims coming for Hajj and Umrah. But in 1933, the situation changed dramatically when the then Saudi king Abdulaziz bin Saud signed an agreement with an American company, Standard Oil of California. Under this agreement, the company was allowed to explore for oil in Saudi Arabia. The company began searching for oil across the country. After 5 years of continuous efforts, in 1938, vast oil reserves were discovered near the eastern Saudi city of Dhahran. This discovery proved to be a revolutionary turning point for Saudi Arabia. A country that was filled with deserts, backward, and poor suddenly became one of the world's major oil producers. To effectively manage the production and export of this oil, Standard Oil partnered with other American companies like Chevron, Exxon, and Mobil. Together, these companies established a new company named the Arabian American Oil Company, or Aramco. Now, America had the technology, capital, and expertise, while Saudi Arabia had immense oil reserves. This partnership benefited both. Saudi Arabia supplied oil to the world, and America assisted in developing Saudi Arabia's oil industry, infrastructure, and economy. Then, during World War II, oil became the world's most valuable asset. America and its allied countries needed a constant supply of oil for their military vehicles, airplanes, and naval warship. In such a scenario, Saudi Arabia's oil reserves became a strategic weapon for the Allied forces. America also quickly realized that access to Middle Eastern oil was not just a matter of business, but also essential for national security. For this reason, in 1943, American President Franklin D. Roosevelt declared Saudi Arabia a vital country for American defense. As part of this chain of events, in February 1945, President Roosevelt and King Abdulaziz bin Saud met face-to-face, and a historic agreement was reached. Under this agreement, it was decided that America would provide full military protection to Saudi Arabia. For many years, a strong, powerful, and strategic relationship has been maintained between America and Saudi Arabia. In return, Saudi Arabia continuously supplied oil to America and its allies during the war. After World War II, from 1950 to 1990, the world was engulfed in a long Cold War. This was essentially a period of intense political and ideological rivalry between America and the Soviet Union. During this period, Saudi Arabia emerged as a key ally of America against the Soviet Union's growing influence in the Middle East. In the 1970s, America and Saudi Arabia's relations were severely affected when, during the 1973 oil crisis, Saudi Arabia, which was leading OPEC at the time, imposed an oil embargo on all Western countries supporting Israel. This oil embargo caused a severe crisis in global markets and increased tensions in Saudi Arabia-America relations. to restore these relations and stabilize the global oil market. In 1974, America and Saudi Arabia signed a highly significant agreement known as the Petrodollar Agreement. Under this agreement, Saudi Arabia agreed that it would sell its oil only in American dollars in the future. This meant that any country wanting to buy oil from Saudi Arabia would first have to convert its currency into American dollars. This led to a tremendous increase in global demand for the American currency. In return, America promised not only to provide military protection to Saudi Arabia, but also economic assistance. This agreement transformed the entire world. The American dollar became the world's most powerful currency, and America's economic and financial system became so strong that it began to influence the entire world. Saudi Arabia's intelligence lay in the fact that it had established a military and economic partnership with the world's most powerful country. This was the time when Saudi Arabia's geopolitical importance began to be recognized worldwide. One major reason for this was that Saudi Arabia is located in one of the world's most strategic locations. The country lies at the crossroads of Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. It is flanked by two highly important seas, and it is surrounded by countries where instability is constant. On Saudi Arabia's eastern border lies the Persian Gulf, a region that holds the world's largest oil reserves and where tensions are always high. This region includes countries like Iran, Iraq, Qatar, and the UAE, whose relations with America have always been complex. Speaking of Iran, before 1979, it was considered America's closest friend in the Middle East. But these relations completely changed after the 1979 Iranian Revolution. Since then, Iran has repeatedly threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz, the passage through which 20% of the world's oil supply passes. This makes it one of the world's most dangerous choke points. If Iran were to close this route, global energy supplies would be severely disrupted. As a result, many economies would collapse. The Strait of Hormuz is also very important for China and India because they import more than 50% of their oil from the Middle East. If any disruption occurs in this region, these two countries would turn to Russia or Iran for their energy needs. This would significantly weaken America's geopolitical grip on the Middle East. Similarly, if we move to the western side of Saudi Arabia, we find the Red Sea, which connects Europe, Africa, and Asia. Approximately 12% of global trade passes through the Bab al-Mandab Strait. This is why it is considered the world's second most important choke point. The country closest to this choke point is Yemen, which is currently under the control of Iran-backed Houthis. These Houthis have, over the past year, repeatedly targeted American and Israeli shipping passing through this area. If Iran or its allies were to close this choke point, it would cause tremendous upheaval in the global economy. Trade between Europe and Asia would be severely affected, and America's influence in this region would diminish. This is why Saudi Arabia is so important to America, as the world's two major choke points, the Strait of Hormuz and Bab al-Mandab, are located right next to Saudi Arabia. And if we look at Saudi Arabia's northern border, we find Iraq and Jordan, two countries that play a significant role in America's military strategy in the Middle East. This area has also become a proxy conflict zone between Iran and America. This makes Saudi Arabia even more important. So, this was the geographical significance of Saudi Arabia. But this is only one reason why Saudi Arabia is so important to America. The relationship between Saudi Arabia and America runs very deep. To understand it, we need to go back to the 1990s and 2000s, when the partnership between the two countries was at its peak. In 1990, a major crisis emerged when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. This was a significant threat to Saudi Arabia because Iraqi forces had reached very close to the Saudi border. In response to this threat, Saudi Arabia sought help from America, and in return, America launched Operation Desert Shield and deployed 500,000 troops to Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries. This was the first time since World War II that America had deployed such a large number of troops anywhere. In 1991, the Gulf War began, and the American-led coalition pushed back Iraqi forces. This was the moment when security cooperation between Saudi Arabia and America grew even stronger, and both countries became partners in the war on terror. This relationship deepened further in 2003, when America invaded Iraq to overthrow Saddam Hussein's regime. Although Saudi Arabia did not publicly fully support this war, it provided behind-the-scenes cooperation for American operations. Saudi Arabia not only allowed the American military to use its airspace, but also provided intelligence and logistical support. This cooperation facilitated America's military intervention in the Middle East. Additionally, Saudi Arabia supported the post-Saddam Iraqi government with financial aid and diplomatic backing to prevent it from falling under Iran's influence. However, as the 2010s began, the relationship between America and Saudi Arabia became quite complex and challenging. During the Obama administration, relations between the two countries were particularly strained. The Obama administration consistently criticized Saudi Arabia on issues like human rights and the Yemen war. When the US and Iran signed the nuclear deal in 2015, Saudi Arabia strongly objected. Saudi Arabia viewed this agreement as a threat to its security, knowing that it would make Iran, its biggest regional rival, more powerful. Then, in 2017, when Donald Trump became the US president, a significant turning point occurred. But we'll discuss that in detail later. First, let's briefly look at Biden and Saudi Arabia's relations. During the Biden administration, relations between the two countries deteriorated further. Biden adopted a tough stance against Saudi Arabia, even reducing military support for Saudi Arabia in the Yemen war. Going further, the Biden administration halted the sale of certain American weapons to Saudi Arabia and attempted to revive the Iran nuclear deal. When Biden called Saudi Arabia a pariah state over the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, relations hit an all-time low. In response, Saudi Arabia began strengthening ties with China and Russia, moving away from the US. But then, in 2024, as soon as Donald Trump won the election and returned, everything changed. A significant shift was observed in US-Saudi relations, as their relationship had already grown very strong during Trump's first term. When Trump first became president, he made several decisions that directly benefited Saudi Arabia. One significant decision was vetoing a congressional attempt to cut off military aid to Saudi Arabia. Additionally, the US withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal, which had been a long-standing wish of Saudi Arabia. During Trump's presidency, the US signed a $110 billion weapons deal with Saudi Arabia, one of the largest arms deals in American history. This agreement strengthened Saudi Arabia's defense capabilities. Now, the question arises, why is Trump so supportive of Saudi Arabia? The answer is that there are certain secretive financial and political deals between Trump and Saudi Arabia that very few people know about. Trump has always welcomed Saudi money, and in return, Saudi Arabia has gained significant influence in American politics. A clear example of this is from November 2004, when, after winning the US presidential election, Donald Trump attended a UFC event. He was accompanied by several big names from the business and sports worlds, such as Elon Musk, UFC President Dana White, and an important Saudi figure, Yasser al-Rumayyan. Yasser al-Rumayyan is considered one of the most powerful figures in global financial circles. He is the head of Saudi Arabia's $930 billion public investment fund. This fund is central to Saudi Arabia's tax policy, sports industry, and other major economic projects. The fund is also directly linked to Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's Vision 2030. Yasser al-Rumayyan's presence at this event was not merely ceremonial, but proof of the deep connection between Saudi Arabia and Donald Trump's political and business empire. This is where Jared Kushner's role becomes prominent. Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law and closest advisor, played a key role in strengthening Saudi Arabia-US relations during Trump's first term. He was considered very close to Mohammed bin Salman. Surprisingly, when Trump lost the presidential election, Saudi Arabia immediately invested $2 billion in Jared Kushner's new investment firm. This decision was highly controversial at the time because Kushner had neither experience in financial management, nor had he ever been an investment banker. Even several officials of the Saudi Public Investment Fund expressed reservations about this decision, but ultimately Mohammed bin Salman personally approved the investment. Analysts suggest this was not an ordinary business deal, but a political reward. A reward given in exchange for Jared Kushner's political loyalty and personal connections. Some experts even say this was an attempt by Saudi Arabia to influence US foreign policy indirectly. Saudi Arabia didn't limit itself to Kushner, but has been continuously investing in Donald Trump's personal businesses for years. Between 2016 and 2017, Saudi lobbyists booked nearly 500 nights at the Trump International Hotel, costing between $300,000 and $800,000. In 2022, Saudi Arabia hosted the LIV golf tournament at Donald Trump's golf courses, which was a major sports deal. Additionally, several Saudi investors have invested in Trump's various properties. This is why Donald Trump likes Saudi Arabia. At a public event, he himself said, "Saudi people buy my apartments, so how can I dislike them?" Then, laughing, he added, "I love them." But the story doesn't end here. Saudi Arabia's ambitions are much bigger. It is not only interfering in American politics or the economy, but has also firmly established itself in the global image and reputation arena, namely the sports industry. In recent years, Saudi Arabia has not only been sponsoring global sports events and teams, but also buying them. England's Premier League team, Newcastle United, LIV Golf, Formula One's Aston Martin team, women's tennis, MMA, wrestling, cycling, esports, and major global boxing events are now being funded by Saudi investments. These investments are not just to promote the sports industry, but are aimed at improving Saudi Arabia's global image and presenting it as a modern, prosperous, and powerful country. In fact, this is not just sports, it's sports washing. Sports washing is a practice where a country's government or institution uses sports to improve its image. And Saudi Arabia's biggest success in this strategy is that it has secured the right to host the 2034 FIFA World Cup. This is not just an event, but an attempt to rebrand Saudi Arabia's global image. But Saudi Arabia's efforts are not limited to sports. It is now heavily investing in technology, social media, and artificial intelligence. At one point, Saudi Arabia was Twitter's largest outside investor. This investment occurred during Jack Dorsey's era, and its purpose was not just financial gain. The Saudi government wanted to use Twitter to spread its narrative and simultaneously monitor those who criticized the Saudi government. In 2018, Saudi Arabia was the largest investor in American startups, particularly in AI, surveillance, and media industries. And when Elon Musk bought Twitter, Saudi Arabia retained its shares and became the second largest shareholder after Elon. This shows that Saudi Arabia's influence on social media will increase further in the coming times. Now the question is, if Donald Trump returns to power, what further benefits could Saudi Arabia gain? Saudi Arabia wants to achieve a major strategic goal, a formal defense agreement with the United States. If this agreement is reached, Saudi Arabia would become a protected ally of the US, and it would be America's responsibility to protect it. In the coming times, Saudi Arabia's role in global geopolitics is set to become even more significant. The world's most important geographical location, the world's largest oil reserves, and heavy investments in technology, defense, and American institutions. Due to all these reasons, Saudi Arabia has now become a key power player. Although today America is the world's largest oil producer, global oil prices are not solely under its control because OPEC is led by Saudi Arabia, and it determines whether oil prices will rise or fall. If Saudi Arabia reduces its oil production, prices rise worldwide. In other words, even though America produces its own oil, it still depends on Saudi Arabia to keep the global market stable. This reality became clear in 2022 after Russia's attack on Ukraine, when oil prices soared, and the US was forced to ask Saudi Arabia to increase its production to stabilize the market. In other words, despite any differences, Saudi Arabia is currently very important to America. Now, it remains to be seen whether Trump's return will bring stability to the Middle East or give rise to a new conflict. If you liked the video, please give it a like and let us know in the comments which topic you'd like to see in the next video.